You recording?
Yep.
Go ahead.
All right. Welcome back to the Secret Society of Man podcast. I'm Ryan. I'm here with my cousin Zach. Thank you for joining us another week here. All right. So we want to cover, I think, a pretty complex topic or something that is very interesting. But first, Zach wanted to get something off his chest with what he's been dealing with lately. So go ahead and fill us in.
Man, growing up, I've always known my dad, he would have trouble remembering things. He'll try to explain something, he can't think of the word that he's looking for, or he'll forget what he's looking for all the time when he walks into a room. And it's always played for jokes in a way, people just give him shit for it. But as I've gone through life, I've noticed myself sort of running into those same situations, and I'm always watching him for signs of his mind deteriorating, so that way I can see what's in store for me. If he's good, then I should be good. But I'm really afraid that one day he's gonna have Alzheimer's or something like that. Well, this manifests in my life just through me just being forgetful about certain things. I'm very competent in some ways, but for small details I forget all the time. A perfect example is lately I've just been losing things, and I've always done this. I always lose my keys, and that's something, or my wallet, right? This is things that happens to everybody, but it happens all the time.
Daily.
Yeah, daily, yeah, pretty much. It's this weird thing where I don't remember where I put things. I just know where I usually put things. I can find my things just as well as I can find my wife's things. I know Chrissy, she usually puts it here or here. But that's the same way I think about it for myself. Most of the time, if I come home and I put everything away, I take my wallet out of my pocket and put my phone somewhere, I don't retain any memory of where I put these things. I just know where I usually put them, right? And so it's just this weird thing. But I lost my wallet a couple weeks ago and couldn't find it. I ended up probably 3 days ago, I got a message from somebody on Facebook, and they said they had the wallet. It was actually my neighbor. They found it laying out by the street outside my house. I just dropped it when bringing in groceries or whatever. And then, so great, I have my wallet back. Well, then yesterday I go to use my wallet to pay for my editing software so I can get this episode out. And then I realized that I don't have my wallet. I'm like, what the fuck? I lost it again. I have no idea where it was. It has not left the house, but I don't know where it is. I wake up this morning and, my wallet's gone. So I borrow Christy's card, and then I walk outside, grab my coffee, and then when I walk out to my car to open my door, I realize that I forgot my phone charger inside. So I'm like, oh crap. So I walk back inside, get my phone charger, go back out to my car. I take off. I go to reach for my coffee. I realized I forgot my coffee in the house. And it's that kind of thing that happens on a daily basis. Yeah. And it's just driving me fucking crazy. And I don't know how Christy doesn't want to strangle me I'm always having to use her stuff. I have to ask her where everything is, and usually she finds it. And I'm afraid that I'm losing my fucking mind. Yeah. Does that happen to you that often?
Yes, that does happen to me. Not nearly as much. However, I will tell you of a time recently where I actually had that happen. So we had a carbon monoxide alarm go off at 2 a.m. Last week. Okay. Right now, currently, we're sleeping in separate bedrooms on the days that I'm working, so I can sleep more.
That's a sign of a decline of marriage, by the way. Already, yeah. You've been married for 3 months, and you're already...
Yeah. So the chirping was so loud that she texts me from upstairs, and she's like, what's that chirping? Well, by this time, I've already taken the thing off the wall, and I'm reading the back, and I'm like, I think it's the alarm. I don't know if it's a false alarm or something, but it's the CO alarm, and it says we need to exit the house. Now, me being a cop, I'm in no concern. I'm kind of taking my time here. This is not a big deal. We're fine, whatever. So she gets him. Now remember, it's freezing. It's in the negatives. We're just coming out of the cellar at this point. It's starting to get warmer. It's freezing out. And call 911. They're like, what's your emergency? I'm like, it's not an emergency. I just need a firefighter to come out, make sure that it's a false alarm. They have these little sensors they just bring in, be like, yep, nope, you're good. It's a false alarm, whatever. And I said, please, God, don't come lights and sirens. I'm like, this is not something we need to do because my city will come lights and sirens or something like that. All right, so we get outside, warm the truck up as much as it could warm up. Anyway, they cleared out. Good to go. Come back out to grab Carly. Well, I didn't bring my house key, and my doorknob on the bottom locks from the outside. So even though it's locked, you can lock it on the inside. It'll turn on the inside. Just the outside's locked. So we get there, and the door won't open. And so I took one of my cards, and I just slipped it between the door, and I was able to get it open. But
Yeah, really? That easy?
Oh, yeah, it's super easy. That's why I always tell
unsettling.
people, use your deadbolt, because you can break into, like, almost any house if you don't use your deadbolt. So use your deadbolt. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The big, use that. It's super easy to get into houses if they don't use it. So use the deadbolt.
Wow.
So I just used my card, slipped in, popped the door open, we're good to go. So, yes, I have forgotten, like, my keys and stuff like that, but not on, like, your level. Now, at the same time, you just started a new job, though. So I will say in the past when I've started new jobs, yeah, 100%. Like, I went through that for, like, 6 months. I think it was just my brain, like, trying to figure out, work and other stuff going on, responsibilities in my life, and then you figure out how to compartmentalize stuff as you.
I mean, that could be, yeah, because I feel like it has gotten worse lately, and that is a big change for sure. But it definitely has happened before. Another thing that I have is, like, I have a terrible time remembering names. Like, I'll meet somebody, and they will say their name, and you could ask me 3 seconds later what their name is. I wouldn't know. I have no idea what their name is. One time I had this client, I was helping them to buy a house, and, I meet them at a house and I shake their hands, and he's like, oh, my name is blah, 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 right? I have no idea what his name was. and then I have to deal with these people for an extended period of time. I ended up working with these guys for like a year, and you run into issues where, like, when I'm speaking to his wife about him, like, I want to be able to refer to him by his name,
right.
But I didn't know his name. So, like, I'd have to come up with weird ways to, like, circumvent that, like, try to phrase my sentences in a way where I can not say his name, but it still would be natural. Usually my strategy is with, like, a married couple, eventually the wife's going to say his name. Sure. And so I'm like, I just got to wait for her to say his name, or better yet, text it to me, because if I see a name in writing, then I remember it. But I can't remember it if it's just verbal. So I wait, like, I try to get them to say it, like, in writing, and then I can remember. Well, I swear, like, I felt like she knew I didn't know his name, and she was just fucking with me, because she would not say his name for a whole year. She wouldn't say his name, to the point where, like, I would show up to a house and it's just her, and I'm like, just you today? And she would say, like, oh, we're just waiting for him. He'll be here in a second. But, like, in a way, it didn't sound natural. Like, usually it'd say, oh, we're just waiting for Dave, or Dave will be here. But she'll always say him. And I'm like, is that his name? Because he's from, like, a different country. Like, maybe his name is him. I don't know. Yeah. But later on, I had to call Hayden. And I was like, listen, like, you need to somehow figure out this guy's name. Like, whenever you meet with him, like, you need to ask his name and tell me what it is, because I don't know, and, like, I got to figure out before this closing. His name was Blyden, and so I don't blame myself because it's a weird name, but it's just, like, crippling.
Should you remember it because it's unique?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, like, and maybe I gotta do the thing where, like, if you say, oh, I'm Ryan, I go, oh, Ryan, like, maybe that's the trick, is you repeat it out loud, and that sort of helps cement it. But it's, like, close to a disability. I try to, like, look up and try to, like, self-diagnose myself, because I'm never going to get around to booking, like, a appointment to, like, get this shit figured out, right? But then, like, I could spend enough time to convince looking at, like, forums and stuff, I convince myself that I have anything. Like, if I spend enough time, or, like, I spend 2 days trying to self-diagnose myself, and I think that I'm an autistic schizophrenic.
Yeah, dude, for real. That's how it works, man. Yeah.
And there's, like, a whole, like, a phenomenon on TikTok and stuff, like, young kids that do that, where they'll look up things and then they'll convince themselves that they have, like, dissociative identity disorder, or, like, all these different things, and they'll make content about it, and, like, that almost is like a community. It's almost like the same thing as people that become furries or whatever. Like they just find this community with other people that think that they have these multiple personalities, and it's a real epidemic. So I try not to look too much into it because then I'll fall into something like that, knowing myself. But like it's something I've really been struggling with. I don't know. I mean, hopefully I don't lose my mind.
What do you think is the cure-all? Like, you gonna give it another 6 months, see what happens, or?
I don't know. I mean, maybe I should. Now that I have good insurance, maybe I should go get something checked out. But like,
Sure.
then if they try to like diagnose me with something, then I'd be skeptical about it. If they're like, oh, well, you just have like ADHD, then I feel like I'd have trouble accepting that. And if they recommended a prescription, I feel like I would just not do it. So at the end of the day, what does it really matter if I'm not going to listen to it anyways?
I guess, yeah.
But like, I don't know. Like, but maybe I should do that for the sake of my at least my wife, so I don't drive her insane. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's something where I think someone's going to bring it up. If somebody else gets concerned about it, then they'll bring it up. But I just I feel guilty sometimes. I just forget shit.
My problem lately has been, so I don't know why I'm kind of in the same boat with you on this type of issue, except it's not so much forgetfulness. It's like I just like drown things out when I get home initially from work. So like when I'm at work, right, like my brain is in hyperdrive, overdrive all the time, thinking all the time. There's not really downtime. I'm constantly thinking about paperwork or emails, possible positions opening up. Did I respond to that email so I can interview for that later? Is there people we need to go pick up? Is there a call coming out that I need to go? Like, it's just constant, right? Your brain is constantly going. And then when I get home, it shuts off. And I feel like me coming down from that, essentially the first like hour to hour and a half that like Carly tries to talk to me, dude, I'm like a zombie, bro. I can't tell you how many times she's like, I'm like, has he been changed recently? And she's like, I just told you.
Yeah.
All the time. Or like, when's the last time he ate? I just told you. Like 10 minutes ago. I'd be like, oh, okay. What about a nap? Also said that. And I'll be like, literally, like, I had no idea. Like, it just totally, like, you know what I mean? So,
yeah, I think that's common.
So that's just something I'm trying to, like, work around or get better at, so. And she knows that. I mean, she also knows I'm busy and stuff, so she's gracious with it, but yeah.
You know, I always ask myself is, how am I supposed to not lose this for the next 70 years? Dude, I'm going to fucking lose this thing. Like, I already, like, so I take it off.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the wedding ring.
Yeah.
I take it off. When I, like, take a shower or whatever, if we go to the gym and things, like, I just have to. There's times when I have to take it off. And then, like, the next day, I'll go to fidget with it, and I realize it's not there. I'm like, oh, fuck, like, where is it? And it's the same thing where it's like, I don't remember where it is, but I know where it might be. And so far, I've lucked out every single time. But I'd be so, like, heartbroken if I lost a wedding ring just because, like, I'd feel dumb. I'd have to replace it with a rubber one or whatever that doesn't cost anything, because at that point, I would know that I'll never be able to keep track of it. But, yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen. But yeah. All right, what's the big topic?
All right, so this is how I came across this, all right? Now, this is how my brain works, and who knows, I might have ADHD for all I know. I mean, literally. So, Deadpool is my favorite Marvel character, okay? Some people might be like, wow, I wonder, how does this get to this, right? Well, I'll explain, okay? So, our topic today is the Avril Lavigne conspiracy theory, okay? Here's how I get to this. I was laying in bed last week, getting ready to go to sleep. And I thought about Deadpool. Well, in Deadpool, there's a transitioning scene. Deadpool Wolverine. There's a transitioning scene of a song from Avril Lavigne, okay? And it just slaps with the movie. Like, Ryan Reynolds is great in that movie with everything that goes on with it. But, and I thought, oh yeah, so I Googled Avril Lavigne. And I was scrolling through the pages, and I saw Avril Lavigne conspiracy theory. And I'm like, had no idea that there was even such a thing about someone who essentially has faded away from the limelight at this point in time. All right, so that's how I got onto this, so here we are, okay? So I look into it, and it first starts out, right, it goes into, essentially when she started, which was around 2002, 2003 area. She released her first album called Let Go. Okay, so Let Go was huge that year. In fact, it made her like the top female solo artist in the UK at the time with her age group. She was like 16 when it came out. Okay, so this was huge stardom. 16 years old, no Disney to back you up. Like this was back when like they were actual rock band type. Now, for those that don't know Avril Lavigne, because this does play into the story, Avril Lavigne, when she first started, was very, I don't know if emo's the right word, but like depressed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Darker clothing, very much like just kind of grungy, kind of like a diet version of Nirvana.
Yeah, she described herself as like a rocker chick sort of look.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. So, album's a massive success. She gets signed by her record label, Arista, which I'm pretty sure is still her label. So, it moves on. They talk about her bandmates. They cover one in particular by the name of Evan. We'll get to Evan because he's also important, but I want to wrap to him later because we'll talk about him in a second, okay? So, a couple things happen here. 2003 into 2004, her second album's released, okay? And this one they're attributing to her post-death, okay? Now, on her second album, there's a cross on her left shoulder, like an X, like a taped X. And the album's name is Under My Skin, okay? And people kind of started noticing a change in Avril once this album was released, okay? A couple things that people attributed to her death was her grandpa died around that time before the second album was released. And publicly, she made it very well known that she was close with her grandfather. I mean, very heartbreaking. There's videos that you can find where she is bawling her eyes out on stage trying to sing songs, and because of him, she mentions him and stuff like that. And then the crippling fame, right? The typical, well, it was too much for her, and she just, and quite honestly, at 16, I mean, that's a lot to ask. And so they're like, well, this is strange. There's some subliminal messages in here in the album. Okay, so it goes in the album, and there's a song in that album called My Happy Ending, okay? Now, in this song, there's a couple lines that state, don't leave me hanging in a city so dead, held up so high on such a breakable thread, okay? Now, when you hear that, you think, okay, you're held up high on a breakable thread. It makes you sound like you hung yourself, right? And I'm sure we'll probably get struck down for saying that on YouTube, but that is what it is. So you follow me at this point? I mean, what are your thoughts so far?
Well, one thing that I think you should mention, just so people know what we're talking about, the conspiracy theory is that she killed herself because, like you said, she couldn't handle the fame. And then now, ever since then, including her songs and music videos in this album, were by a body double named Melissa. I forgot the last name. But,
I have it in
okay, yeah. But so let's just get that out of the way so people know what this is all alluding to.
Yes.
But, yeah, so, the video that you had sent about this, I watched it a couple times, and I personally don't really buy that. I think this is stupid, okay? But I watched it a couple times. So, yeah, they say, they read into a lot of stuff. So with this particular album, back to that album cover, it's called Under My Skin. And so the idea is that that's alluding to her being wearing the skin of Avril Lavigne, like someone that she's not, right?
Correct.
And then her wearing like that outfit with the red X means that like it's not really her. And then her name is written in black, which is like a dark color, and red is like a warning, right? So they're just reading into every detail, trying to find ways to back it up. And right away, my impression of that thing and like any analysis of the lyrics is like, why, like, especially right then, like when that first happened, and this Melissa girl now has to take on the mantle of Avril Lavigne after she killed herself. Why would you leave hints Like all these conspiracy theories from this to QAnon, right? It's all like they're leaving trails of hints.
Yeah.
Like why would they do that?
Yeah. So here's what I want to preface by saying this. I'm not necessarily going into this saying like I full-fledged believe it, okay? But I'm looking for, is there a possibility, okay? There might be. I mean, look, man, there's a lot of people thought UFOs were fake, right? And then all of a sudden you got pilots being like, no, these are legit. Like, these are alien things, right? So is there a possibility? Sure. Is it likely? Maybe not. But let's keep discussing.
Yeah, of course,
okay?
yeah.
All right, so we're past that. Yes, we'll get to Melissa, okay? All right, so I brought up those lyrics. That's how they kind of said, okay, maybe she took her own life by hanging, okay? There's other songs that talk about losing her mind. She fell from grace. I have a couple others that I'll touch on later, but you guys kind of get the idea of like reading into the lyrics. And again, I have a couple more that I'll talk about later. So once Avril supposedly died, right, like you had brought up, they needed a double, somebody who looks like her, and this character woman came up, and her name is Melissa Vandella, okay? Now, for those that haven't looked it up yet or don't know anything about this, Avril and Melissa look very similar. Like, very similar.
Yeah, well, they're the same person.
Like, but that's what I'm
yeah, I
trying
know,
to
yeah,
get
yeah.
at. So, like, that's what's freaky about it, right?
Right.
And so, it's like, why, you know what I mean? Like, so do you think, like, she just changed her name then? Or, like, what do you think the deal is with that?
What do you mean?
Because Avril Lavigne was her birth name. So.
Uh-huh.
Right. So, Melissa Vandella, what do you mean by the same person?
They're not. Melissa's not real. This is just made up.
Yeah, but we're playing the game, dude.
Wait.
You know what I mean?
Well, so here's my biggest issue with it at its core.
Sure.
This whole thing, and we'll keep talking about all the details. I want to go through everything you have written down.
Yep.
But the whole thing is hinging on her having killed herself. So there's tons of, circumstantial evidence that you can put together for like why it's a body double. But the whole thing hinges on her having unalived herself in a hotel room. And and that is the only thing that has no evidence. That is a completely baseless guess of what happened. Like, there's literally no evidence or even like fake circumstantial evidence to say that she killed herself, right? And so I think that's where the conspiracy starts and kicks everything off. But there's no evidence for that part of it.
Yes. So yes, after I'm done with my notes here, I'll kind of tell you what my official stance is on it and reasons why. Okay. All right. So Melissa Vandella, they're like, yep, body double, all that stuff. Okay. So Melissa steps into this role, and basically, according to the conspiracy, they're telling, or the label's telling her like, hey, you need to be like her, dress like her, and whatever, right? Sound like her. So this video that I sent you, which obviously I watched as well, a couple things were brought up. One thing was like freckles on the face, right? You saw the picture. The freckles are different.
Mm-hmm.
Her height's different, I guess. Now.
Yeah, the height's different by 1 inch, and it was like two different sources had different.
Now, the one thing I don't believe is it is possible that the new Avril, right, could be shorter, okay? I don't believe it's caused by age, though. Like, 20 years, you're not going to lose an inch in 20 years. 50 years, probably. But it is true that you can shorten, right, when you age. Not that quick, though. Not within, like, 20 years. So whatever that may be, I don't know what the deal is with that or, like, who came up with that. So that part I kind of overlooked a little bit because I'm like, well, I mean, that...
And really, it was just that, like, Wikipedia had, like, or something had said, oh, she's 5'7", and then a different website said she was 5'8". Like, that's really all the evidence is. There isn't even, like, she stood in the same spot and she looked two different heights, just that two different sources had her listed as an inch apart. Right. And it's like, I'm pretty sure I've told somebody before that I'm 6 feet tall, but I'm really 5'11". And I feel like that, I mean, it just comes down to something like that. And one thing I wanted to say about this, Melissa, when you're not understanding like what I was saying, so just like how the suicide part is baseless, there's no evidence that Melissa ever existed. Like there's no like Facebook profile of a Melissa from MySpace profile from 2003 before this supposedly happened.
Yes.
How'd they even come up with the name?
I'll get to that.
Okay.
Not necessarily how they came up with the name, but I do have something to say on that.
All right.
What you were saying. So, okay. So, yep. So we kind of, the video that we had watched, he's kind of scrolling through like some social media stuff. And as you had kind of brought up before, there is a picture of this Avril, right, holding her hand out like this with Melissa written on her hand. Now, people obviously addressed that to Avril, and supposedly it was some fan promotion or some type of promotion for somebody, probably named Melissa. I'm guessing like maybe a birthday wish or something like, oh my God, Avril's my favorite singer, and she wrote her name on her hand or something, right? So there could be that there. But people were like, well, that's really weird because, why would she do something like that? Like, especially these people think that this Melissa did take over. Why would she put that on her wrist or on the back of her hand? Stuff like that.
And it looked like so I looked at it to try to see what I would make of that, having not heard of this really. And like, it's on the back of her fist. She's like making a fist in the album cover like this. And just based off of how angsty she looks and the way that she dresses and how young she was, like I feel like Melissa might have been her like high school bully or something, and so she put Melissa on there on her fist. Like that's the impression that I got.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I mean, it could be possible, right? Like I said, we're talking about possibilities here, so that's what we're covering. So, all right. So I kind of started looking through more songs and stuff like that, attributed also with the video that we had watched. And there's one song called Together, okay? So in the song, there's lyrics like, the truth comes to me, I'm living a lie, how does it feel to be different than me because we are the same? Things that are saying we're two different people, but we are the same, okay? Now, it's not unheard of for, actors too, but singers to have like alter egos, I guess you could say, or have like some like Slim Shady, Eminem.
Right.
Same thing. Eminem, Slim Shady and Eminem are the same people. It's just Slim Shady was more of the darker albums. Eminem was more like, the Cinderella song and all that stuff, right? Rising Up and everything. So it's not unheard of. So again, when I heard that part, I'm like, okay, I'm really trying to keep my mind open here and be like, is that, could it be, maybe she was struggling with something. I don't know. Maybe that was part of her mental health at the time. Maybe she did believe that there were two people within her, like mental health type stuff. I don't know, right? That could be a possibility as well. So, so what I wanted to cover with you is probably, to me, one of the biggest things that stood out was Evan, okay? And I'm sure you probably remember this too, because to me, this was significant in the way of like just strange, I guess. And maybe I'm digging too far into the lyrics, like you said. But the song about September, okay? So Evan was her favorite bandmate. She made that clear. Like, to be honest with you, I'm surprised like there's no documentation on them like dating ever, because it seems like that was the type of relationship they were in. So Evan would always, not always, but most of the time help her write songs, okay? There was one song called Best Years of Our Lives, all right? Now, when you hear that title, you think, okay, they're kind of reminiscing, right? They're thinking about the past. They're thinking about their golden years, that when they were together or just whatever, in the band together. So there's some lyrics in that song specifically, where, for example, Evan's part says, September took me by surprise. Now I was left to watch the seasons change. I never thought that this could end. I never thought I could lose my best friend. I never thought I could feel this low. I was there left alone. And this song was done in 2011. So if you are to assume that she did in fact die, this was about 7 to 8 years after the fact. So, what are you, I mean, like you said, I know you kind of shot it down earlier, but as far as the lyrics, it's kind of weird, right? I mean, that's strange.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
right?
I mean, it is strange that I had some lyrics, not lyrics, but a interpretation of the music video of one of these music videos, one where she is wearing, it's like two different characters, both of them are Avril Lavigne, but in one part she's wearing black, the other one she's wearing white, and I guess the interpretation in this conspiracy theory is like it is a death of the old Avril and like the birth of a new Avril. And they take that to mean that Avril died and then this new person took over. Why would you take it that literally? Like why, like in a lot of the stuff you just talked about makes it seem like, to me, it's a young artist that's like struggling with identity, you know, because she had two different like stark sort of appearances. So like the old Avril was very punk rock, like you said, and then she comes out with like basically a pop sort of album,
a rainbow like tutu.
Yeah. So it's like more like a Britney Spears sort of look, right? And so obviously, like as she grew, she sort of like is expressing herself differently, but she still recognizes like the old her, right? So there's two different sides of her, but she's like becoming a new person, but she's still kind of the old person. Like I feel like that's a pretty common thing when it comes to music, like trying to explore that sort of identity. I feel like Taylor Swift went through a similar sort of thing where, you know, she was country, then she became more like pop or whatever. And I think, you know, some of her lyrics might be that same way. Kendrick Lamar just had a music video where he was playing two characters. One wore black and the other one wore white. And I watched a similar like breakdown of people love to like analyze that fucking guy like he is like a genius. Yeah, like I mean, I think that he's a great rapper and everything, but people look way too much into everything that he does. Like everything is a subliminal message, and I just think that it's a little bit too much. Like, I think there's a much more normal interpretation to take rather than like this is her dropping hints that the old Avril's dead and there's literally a new Avril Lavigne. Like, doesn't that? I mean, I know you agree that it makes sense, but like I just think it's like, some conspiracy theories are good conspiracy theories where you're like, oh, like maybe, like I don't know, but this one just seemed like a strange. Just looking too much into things. Like I don't know what. But
I mean, look, it built enough steam, like for like worldwide for people to know about it, right?
Yeah, I guess so. But it's interesting how people look into things. So I guess. But what was your original interpretation when you're hearing these things? Like, there's a lot of small things they point out, and so sometimes these conspiracy theories, like you hear one thing and you're like, this is dumb. Two things, you're like, this is dumb. But as you hear more, you're like, okay, this is like 100 small things that are like too much to be coincidence. Like, was there any point where you really started to buy into it?
So I'll get to that. Again, when I get to the end of this,
okay. All right.
I'll wrap everything up in a nice bow for you, okay? So, because, you know, we're not going to play these songs, and quite frankly, we honestly probably couldn't anyway because of copyright. So, people that are listening, go back, listen to the songs. They're everywhere. You can listen to the ones that we've already mentioned if you're curious about it. But, you know, one thing that in that video that we had watched, the guy brought up, you know, the old Avril sounds way different than the new Avril. And I would agree with that. But at the same time, there's also aging, right? Like, the Rolling Stones aren't going to sound the same as they did in the 70s, right? It's just not going to happen. It is a little strange that when he was replaying some of the songs, some of the live concerts, it was a little strange when her voice, the new Avril's voice, would like cut off differently than the old one. Like, it's almost like she wouldn't finish the word. It would kind of just fall off. That was kind of weird because it's completely different. But again, it could just be fatigue. I mean, she's been singing for how long, right? But again, we'll get to that. So, anyway, so I urge people, go listen to that, and then we'll get to a couple other things here. So, so if it isn't, so again, like you said, Melissa doesn't exist. to your belief. Who knows? Maybe there is some Melissa Vandella out there or whatever it may be. If that's the case, I read a comment under that video, somebody needs to just like get those two in a room and just take a picture or something and be like, hey, like, this is her, this is me. Like, we're two different people or something, you know what I mean? I think people just won't turn down that thought unless somehow they can manufacture that to happen. And I don't know if like AI would be something to do that, but like that person coming up with that comment, they'll never believe anything until you can put those two people in the same room. I'm going to believe that Avril died and Melissa is the new Avril. You know
Yeah, but I think the problem is that Melissa is completely made up. So like it's not that there is a Melissa but she just didn't take over Avril Lavigne. You know, she's just doing her own thing. Like Melissa doesn't exist, right? Like is there any evidence to suggest that this Melissa person ever existed? Like
not that I have found.
Okay.
No,
yeah.
I've Googled it and pictures of what looks to be Avril comes up, right?
Right.
So when I Google her, it does look like it's the same person, right? Like it is Avril. But my question is, where did the name come from then? Like that's what I don't understand. Like where did this Melissa Vandella come from? That doesn't make any sense to me. Like who would come up with that?
I don't know.
Like why when I Google that, why does Avril show up? Like where does that come from?
That's because the only time anybody has ever heard that name is in relation to Avril Lavigne. Like you would think that people are pretty dang good at finding stuff out nowadays. Like there would be some history of Avril. Like, oh, this is this Melissa person. You know, here's a picture of, you know, them back whenever like Avril was alive or like recording. And because if you want to try to make this believable, here's how I would look at it. Like apparently Avril Lavigne was pretty outspoken about not liking the press and the paparazzi and the pressure of being famous, right? And so for them to go out and get a body double that would do the public appearances and things like that to take that pressure off of the actual Avril Lavigne, and then Avril Lavigne does kill herself, and they're like, well, now the body double has to take over. Like that's the most believable scenario I can come up with.
Right.
And if that was the case, then you would think that there's some like footage of them together or like her backstage or something like that, like some proof that they both existed at the same time. But I feel like this whole thing was just made on some blog post one day.
Sure. But all right, so let's go down that rabbit hole. So let's assume that Melissa is a real person.
Okay.
Let's just assume that, okay? This was in Avril's prime, okay? So like I said, Let Go just got released. She's worth millions of dollars. Like she was the Louis Capaldis when they came out, the whatever Maroon 5 when they were hot, all that stuff, right? So if I'm the record label, which according to this conspiracy theory is essentially the people that fashioned all this together, if I'm the record label, I'm going to have a closed-door meeting, and I'm going to say, okay, here's the deal. Any pictures of those two together are gone, okay? And don't forget, this is the early 2000s, so it's probably not hard to get rid of stuff like that. It's not like today, because we need this to keep going. She is our cash cow, and so therefore we need to make this happen. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like you said. Now, I'll answer your question that you asked me earlier. You know, was me seeing all these like coincidences really starting to convince me? I wouldn't say convince was the right word. I would say I was becoming more open-minded about it, but I wouldn't say I'm convinced. I wouldn't say that. There's a couple major things for me, and I just draw on like my cop background, right?
Okay.
And like, so for example, if an artist in their in their peak kills themselves, it's all over the news. Like there is, I don't care what decade you're from, it's all over the news, all over it. I mean, I don't know if you remember like Brittany Murphy. Okay, Brittany Murphy, major actress, up and coming, did movies with like Dakota Fanning and a couple other like big names, Sean Penn, all that stuff. She ended up dying all of a sudden, mid to late 2000s. Died all over the news. Okay, and that wasn't a suicide. That was, she died by black mold. I'm not going to get down that road.
Okay.
Yeah, super weird. Some people think she was murdered, but maybe that's something else we can cover later on. But my point is there is not a chance, because the family's going to know about it, right?
Yeah, exactly. How do you keep everybody
correct.
quiet?
Like, and so you tell the parents, hey, don't say anything. First of all, if it was my kid, I'd be like, screw you. I'm going to tell whomever I want to tell. And there's no way you could keep a cap on that. There's no way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not possible. Like, I'm sorry, it's not. So there's that, okay? The other issue that I have with this is, again, the aging process. It's totally normal for her voice, because in the video, he talked about, like, the pitch changed. Her voice is higher. In the first album, it was very low. Kind of, not monotone, but very just kind of like almost talking the words.
Yeah.
Right? Well, as you get older and you mature, your voice is going to change and your style is going to change. That's just how it is. Like, you're like you brought up, Taylor Swift's a great point. But you also have to remember, she's part of a record label. And if they want her to do things, she also has to follow through on that stuff. She's signed to a contract. So that whole, like, tutu wearing in a candy shop, like, singing those songs, like, if they tell her to do that, she has to do it.
Yes,
There
yes.
is no, like, there's no negotiation there. It is what you have to do, you know?
And, like, so she mentioned one of these early clips after, like, her first album, when she was kind of talking about her style and stuff. She did mention she writes her own songs, but there's no reason to believe that she has written all of her own songs. Like, it's totally possible that she wrote her first album. That's how she got discovered,
Yep.
got that recorded. And then after that, though, they probably kind of took over from there. Like, all these things where they're reading into the lyrics, like, what are the chances that she actually wrote all of those songs to drop those hints?
Yeah. But I will say, like I said, I really try going into this with an open mind, okay? I did find the Evans song a little strange. That was weird. Like, that was kind of like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Like, you'll be able to talk with her until you die. It's not like, what does that mean? You're alone. Like, it'll never be the same. Like, what does that mean?
Maybe they broke up.
You know, yeah, but there's no documentation of that. Now, that
Yes.
doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Right.
But why if that happened, why would they collaborate to make that song? I mean, that's
I don't know.
strange.
I mean, you could break up but still respect each other as artists or whatever.
Sure.
But then, like, you know, you feel some sense of loss. And, like, I'm not here to shut down your whole fucking topic, but
No.
I mean, I also went in with an open mind, but it's just like some of the stuff is like, come on, guys.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. I'll admit that. But, like, at the same time, with conspiracies, like I said, there's been some weird conspiracies out there where there has been some type of truth to it. Right?
That's true.
And so, with that being said, I was reading through comments on that video I sent you, and there was actually one person I actually agreed with, and they made a great point. They said, and I'm quoting here, here's my take on it. I think everybody is telling the truth on this issue. She's like, I think Avril is Melissa, but in a maturing way. Like, Avril was kind of like the immature 16-year-old, and she matured into this different identity, essentially. So, did Avril die? In a sense, you could say she did, but she also grew up and moved on to something better, right? Now, Avril still calls herself Avril, but I get what that person was trying to say, right? Like,
it's metaphorical.
Yes, it's a different death and reawakening, I guess you could say.
And I think that's what she was trying to say in the lyrics. Like, song lyrics are metaphorical. Like, it's crazy to take everything this literally. Like, it's just...
Except for whoever's saying murder on my mind, that dude literally was talking about, like, murdering somebody, so...
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of rappers... I mean, that's a little different, I suppose. But, yeah, I mean, a lot of rappers actually do that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think it's metaphorical. Now, this did get me thinking, though, about other similar conspiracies, because this body double thing is a recurring theme in conspiracies. Yes. And I have been more compelled by other ones. The ones that come to mind is, like, Putin. There was one a while back about him. People,
Biden?
Joe Biden. Dude. And then Donald Trump's wife, Melania Trump, right? That was another big one. So, but all of those were more compelling because they weren't necessarily based on like a death of the original person. Like when they're talking about Melania Trump, it was more about their relationships on the rocks, and she doesn't want to be seen in public all the time. And then like people have there's body double conspiracies where they're doing it just so they don't get assassinated. Like is this really him? And like those are way more believable. Like I think the problem with this Avril Lavigne one is like the reason why she would do this because she's dead. It is like a little bit too far fetched. Like if the thing was she doesn't like being in the spotlight, so all her public appearances are a body double. That would change, and all the evidence exactly the same. That would change my view on it completely.
So why can't it be that view though?
Well, that's not what the conspiracy is. Everyone's saying that she's dead.
Sure, but if you take the death out, is it much more believable to you?
Yeah, it's much more compelling at the very least.
Okay.
Because then it's like there's a believable reason why this would be happening.
Yes.
Yeah. So like, were you a believer in any of these other body double conspiracies?
So, I haven't looked too much into them. What I will say is, I'm kind of on the same boat as far as like, I'm all about, I totally believe like actors would have a body double enough to go do public events or something, close enough to where people might not notice, or maybe they're walking in a distance, or they're on stage, right, where you can't get too close, where you're like, you're not the real person.
Yeah.
I do believe that. I think that totally makes sense. It's a cheaper way to get out of things that you might be tied into with labels or other contracts that you might be under that you have to attend certain things. I do believe that, but I just don't know with Avril. I guess you could play devil's advocate too, though, and say, okay, clearly as she's gotten older, she's gotten much more open with people, much more just talking to people, I guess you could say. They showed some videos when she first started. She did not like talking to anybody. She didn't want to be in the limelight. She didn't like being interviewed. She was just this introvert, right? Mm-hmm. Which is part of the evidence that people are using. Like, she's such a different person now than she was, which again happens. But, that to me is strange in and of itself, because I feel like that would cause more of an eye-opening of being like, well, that's not how you are, though. Like, why not just deny interviews? You know what I mean?
What's interesting as you're saying that is it's interesting how people view this transformation as she's matured as a person completely differently than they would view it if anybody else they know in their personal life. Like, why are celebrities not allowed the same grace to change? Because, like, imagine if anybody that went through like an emo phase or a goth phase or something like that, or like me, I looked way different back then, like back in like high school and shit than I did now, right? And imagine if I showed somebody a picture of me in high school and their conclusion was that I died and I am now a body double. Like, that's outrageous. It's like, no, I had a longer hair back then, or like if, you have a goth girl that ended up becoming a regular looking lady, like, yeah, I went through a goth phase. I didn't die and get replaced by a body double. Like,
Yeah.
why don't we allow that
Right.
same grace to celebrities?
The other thing that nobody had talked about that I've read from this conspiracy is she's been married to 2 people. One of them is fairly famous, the lead singer of Nickelback, Chad Kroeger. Okay, a lot of people don't talk about that, and that was between I think 2011 and 2015. Okay, where's he at? Nobody's like, well, yeah, he won't answer any questions. Like, it's mysterious. Like, he doesn't want to talk about anything, and whatever. Or he came out and said, yeah, I don't know if that's the real Avril or something. You know what I mean? Like, something to like help kind of push that more. Nobody talks about, well, she was in relationships.
Yeah.
When two marriages when this happened. So.
And like, does Avril Lavigne's family invite Melissa over for Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I mean, hey, like I said, people are like, why don't they just take a picture in the same room, And it's like, look, man, here's the thing. If truly, if Melissa is a real person, by God, just make it happen. I don't care what you need to do. Clearly, you're close to her. You're close to Avril. If you are real, because you're her supposed double, just take a photo and just leave it. Like, just let it go, But at the same time, why do they care? You know what I mean? They would never. And you think about the money. Why would you ever say that you do have a body double? Because then anything that people pay you for, are you going to wonder, is that the real Avril or not?
Yeah, well, you can't. If that is a thing where like she actually does have one, but she's not actually dead. Yeah, well, then you can't say it,
No.
So I guess I understand. So, and you know what, man? Like, maybe this is more common than we actually know. Like, maybe celebrities just have body doubles.
Yeah.
No, not dead. They just have body doubles, like for public appearances, like you said, like just something they don't want to do or they're sick or something like that. Like, maybe that's a regular thing that happens. Yeah. But in this case, it just got like taken a little bit too far. Out of all the body double conspiracies, this one was the least convincing. I can't remember the details on some of these other ones, but like, I swear I was way more convinced by like the Melania Trump one and things, just because of like the physical stuff. Like, if someone's a completely different height in pictures, for instance, like, those are things that are a little bit more convincing.
I think it would be with the height thing. Yeah, I would be more convinced if it was like a 3 or 4 inch difference. Then yeah, that's strange. Like, bro, you don't shrink 3 or 4 inches in 20 years. Not even an inch, but like, it's what I mean. If it was like noticeable, I'd be like, what happened? Did you get like surgery to like shorten your femur?
Yeah.
Or something? What's going on here, So there's a lot there. I quite honestly, whether it's true or not, which likelihood it's probably not, but like I said, we're here about possibilities. Okay, we talk about all strange stuff. We talk about true crime stuff. We talk about, so we're testing the waters here. Is there a possibility? Look, there's always a possibility. I mean, I was just watching news the other day, and scientists said there's like a 3% chance an asteroid's going to hit us here in like 3 months. So it is what it is, right? There's always a possibility that something could be true. But if either way, I feel bad for Avril, because I'm sure she gets asked these questions. Can you imagine if somebody came up to you and be like, hey, are you the real Zach?
Yeah.
I'd be like,
I would start to question it.
Yeah. And do you think maybe she laid down in bed one night and she's like, am I a lie? Maybe that's what that lyric meant.
Dude.
I'm all a lie. You know what I mean? Or it's all a lie. Like, makes you wonder, right? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, any feedback that you get, even if it's not something crazy like that, but it's just like people just have negative stuff to say about you, like that stuff will affect you. Like, people can say everything you do sucks and is bad. Like, that's got to affect your own opinion on yourself. So when people say that you are an imposter, like you're not even really you, like that's got to have some kind of negative effect.
Dude, like,
and the worst part about it is that there's nothing that you can do to like change people's mind. Like, anybody that like they're a believer of this, like this is their reality, there's nothing you can do to convince them that you are you. Correct. And like that's like gaslighting to the max. Yeah. And yeah, so that's gonna be a tough life. But
So, I mean, is there anything else you wanted to cover on this? I mean, can you think of anything was there anything part of this where you're like, hey, that might be a possibility? Like,
I mean, I would say if there's anything that was the most convincing, besides that scenario laid out where she was a body double just for public appearances or whatever, like the voice, like the comparison of the voice was the most convincing out of anything, if anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think all of this can just be explained by maturity. I'm all for entertaining conspiracy theories, but I'm not putting up with the bullshit, dude. No, I'm not buying it. Not this one.
Yeah, I just think, like I said, there's a possibility to anything in life. I mean, 100%. There could be some truth here. Like you said, there could be a body double, right? We don't know, okay? Maybe she didn't necessarily kill herself. Maybe she tried to kill herself. And they didn't want the publicity at the time, so they came up with something else to help, curb that until she got better. Who knows, right? There could be plenty of different avenues to go down this. And Avril even tell her herself to you guys that she did struggle mentally for a while. And it's very clear in her songs that it was, like I said, it's not dark like Nirvana, but it's
angsty.
Heartbreak. It's not happy, right? My Happy Ending is not a happy song, okay? So just something to think about. I thought it at least caught my eye, and I was in bed reading this for quite some time, and that video that we watched was like 40 minutes. So I did watch that whole video when I was laying in bed that night, so which I regretted in the morning, but that's where we're at. So.
All right, man. Well, thanks for watching. We release an episode every week, and if you made it this far, like and subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you.